Bull Demon stood still for a long moment. The slightest breeze passing by was enough to make it utterly exhausted. It had poured everything into this battle. Even its fearsome lava axe was chipped and cracked all over. Looking no better than an old retired woodcutter's axe, Bull Demon panted heavily, struggling to stand tall, savoring its hard-earned victory. But it didn't last long. As soon as it relaxed, exhaustion took over, and its massive body wobbled, just as it was about to collapse. Some lunatic sucker punched it right in the chest. Turns out it was the kangaroo, who had somehow appeared out of nowhere, rudely catching Bull Demon before it could fall. Not only that, but it even scolded Bull Demon, reminding it that after such a hard-fought win, it shouldn't just collapse. Suddenly, from within the tunneling device's gate, a familiar green light flickered. A streak of spiritual energy shot out like a razor, zipping through the air in a perfect arc before landing atop the black tower, right in front of Bull Demon. Calling it razor sharp wasn't an exaggeration. It was Sujuan of the Falcon clan. To surprise, Sujuan was still alive. When it had rushed over from the fortress, it had taken a bullet, and now red blood was seeping from its wings, but its demeanor remained as cold and composed as ever. Worthy of being the god of the skies, the top scout of the Misty Mountains, Bull Demon looked at it, noting its silence, and reminded it, "Your wing." Only then did Sujuan speak. "I'm fine, I can still endure. You stay here and stabilize the situation, prevent any further chaos." Normally, Sujuan would have instructed Bull Demon to deal with the Black Tower, but seeing that it was already handling things well, it kept its message brief before spreading its wings and flying back toward the tunneling device. Blood still dripped from its wing, but its entire body was already shrouded in a brilliant golden aura of spiritual energy. "I still have to notify the others." Without wasting a second, Bull Demon grabbed its battered axe, something that should have already been tossed onto the scrap heap. Yet, as if reignited by determination, spiritual energy surged around it, enveloping its entire being as it raised the axe high. The sky roared with power, as if divine lightning had struck down upon Bull Demon, making it appear entirely different. This surge of energy did not go unnoticed. The creatures below immediately realized something was happening, though they lacked mouths to speak. They seemed to understand what was about to unfold. Countless glowing eyes fixated on the Black Tower, losing all interest in fighting the barbarian tribes. Instead, they rushed toward the tower's base, trampling over each other in a desperate attempt to climb. It was like watching a swarm of fire ants drawn to raw meat. They were drawn to Bull Demon's spiritual energy, yet it carried no trace of Zam's presence. By now, everyone from the Misty Mountains had realized. They were trying to protect the Black Tower. The barbarian warriors were momentarily confused, then quickly gave chase, shouting, "Look! They're charging the tower!" Bull Demon, still gathering its energy, glanced back at the kangaroo, gritting its teeth. "Leave now, or you'll get caught up in this." The kangaroo hesitated. Maybe it was debating whether it could help. Its deep gaze suggested a fleeting thought. Should it go all in, fight alongside its comrades, and prove its undying loyalty? But no, it turned and bolted, shouting at Bull Demon to stay alive before dashing out of the tower. There wasn't much time left anyway. The one-eyed abominations were already upon them. Even an elephant can be overwhelmed by enough ants. What chance did a lone warrior have against a ravenous horde? Yet Bull Demon stood tall, gripping its axe like a lightning rod, waiting for the creatures to come crashing down upon it. It watched, satisfied, as their numbers grew. "Perish with this tower," Bull Demon roared, smelling its own blood seeping into its dark hide, leaving a sticky, hardened texture. Whether it had lost a horn or was drenched in blood, these creatures were still no match for it. With a blinding golden slash, the axe came down. The first wave of creatures had barely arrived before they found themselves engulfed in an explosive burst of light. Their eyes widened in shock as their bodies instinctively pressed forward, moths to a flame. There was only one ending: boom. The explosion was so immense it stripped the skin from the Black Tower's surface, sending debris flying in all directions, shredded flesh scattering through the air. The kangaroo, despite having started running early, barely avoided being caught in the blast. It had left just in time, exactly as Bull Demon had warned. Hesitate, and death would be swift. The battlefield already a chaotic war zone, was now being torn apart. The city trembled as the ground cracked into jagged chunks. Among the towering clouds of dust, entire buildings collapsed and were buried. The aftershocks of the explosion continued for a long while. The black tower crumbled, the earth split, and debris was strewn everywhere. Bull Demon, utterly drained, fell to its knees. Its axe was embedded in the ground nearby. No abomination had survived that final strike, but it had also spent all of its strength. Blood continued to spill, pooling around Bull Demon's mouth. It lifted its head toward the sky, eyes narrowing with one last thought before unconsciousness took over. The rest is up to you, then. It let go of everything. Bull Demon's world went silent, separate from the still raging battlefield. Would the barbarians escape? Were the abominations truly eradicated? Would Zam's demonic beasts continue the fight? At this point, it no longer had the strength to find out. Elsewhere, a flash of blue light erupted as something heavy slammed into the ground. Zelen, now transformed, cautiously leapt away from its opponent. An octopus? Not quite. The god before it had taken on a bizarre form. With sleek, smooth blue skin, it stood there silently, gazing at Zelen as if the mantis were beneath its notice. It had barely even revealed its abilities. As the number of fallen gods increased, the power of those remaining only grew stronger. Zelen was up against a formidable opponent. It let out a series of sharp, screeching cries to hype itself up. Was this god any different from the monsters it had fought in space? Only one way to find out: by clashing head-on. Zelen became a streak of emerald light, striking straight at the octopus-faced god. It stood firm, barely tilting backward. It didn't get pushed back. It had deliberately adjusted its stance, blocking Zelen's sickle-like appendages with ease. The seemingly smooth blue skin of the god was far tougher than expected. The moment Zelen's side struck, it shattered into fragments. Its eyes widened in disbelief. It had been named Zelen, the Reaper's Scythe. It wasn't some brittle toy yet. Here it was, unable to cut through. Had this god changed since before? Zelen's eyes burned with questions. The arrogant god saw no need to hide its power. My body is composed of the hardest material on this planet. I possess the greatest defense among the 12 gods. It flexed its many tendrils, demonstrating both fluidity and impenetrable defense, its golden spiritual energy blazing brightly. I am the god of matter. The overwhelming aura radiating from the octopus god was indeed intimidating. But Zelen had fought tougher foes before. Quit your bragging, it roared, lunging forward for another strike. But the god moved first. A perfectly timed counterattack sent Zelen flying backward, knocking the wind out of it. What the hell? It growled, gritting its teeth as pain spread from its face. Looking down, it saw cracks forming in its once pristine exoskeleton. Its pride, like its armor, had begun to shatter. And in that moment of shock, a solemn face flashed in its mind. Yuziu, how can you hope to outrun the speed of light? Ever since its master had forced it to evolve, Zelen had relentlessly pushed itself forward. It refused to be left speechless again. I have become much stronger. I am not weak, it roared at the god of matter. But it was as if it was responding to Yuziu. All this time, it had been alone in the void, venturing into the universe to slay monsters. For what reason? It couldn't have just contributed to the power of the Misty Mountains only to die immediately. No, Zelen refused to accept that. It was something that made the space in front of it crack open with white fissures. Like torn flesh, the white streaks extended, stretching all the way to the god of matter, making sharp cracking sounds. The god of matter could feel the surge of Zelen's spiritual energy on the opposite side. What was it planning? The deity remained cautious, watching Zelen, but it wasn't summoning the void or drawing anything from it. Instead, its power reached its peak, first glowing white before shifting into a deep green, then launching forward with immense force. Not good. The octopus quickly pulled all its tentacles back to shield itself, but the mantis was advancing faster and more powerfully than it had anticipated. Every single tentacle was gathered for defense, and yet, the small mantis collided with a force that sent the deity flying backward by dozens of meters, lifting it 2 meters off the ground and dragging it along for an even greater distance before finally crashing down with a heavy thud. Only its spiritual energy remained, while the deity itself was pinned against the ground. Looking again, several of its tentacles had been severed down to their base. Blood spurted everywhere. The god of matter didn't even realize that fragments of its own body were scattering into the air. As it turned its gaze, it saw its severed tentacles flung far away. What? It lost them completely. A single second of distraction had drastically weakened its defense. It continued to be dragged for a long stretch until a massive explosion finally brought everything to a stop. Zelen rose from the dust of its own making, scanning the surroundings. Where the hell is that octopus bastard? Did you finally die?